Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. So we're continuing a study of the third canto, starting a new chapter, chapter 21, text 1 through 12. Okay, so we can have a few readers. We have 12 verses, and then we'll go back to our main verse. The name of this chapter is The Conversation Between Manu and Kardama.
The verse said, the line of Swayambhuva Manu was most esteemed. O worshipful sage, I beg, give me an account of this race, whose progeny multiplied, etc.
Merciless one, you have spoken of his daughter, known by the name Devahuti, is the wife of the sage Hardu, Lord of created beings.
How many offspring did that great yogi beget through the princess, who was endowed with eightfold perfection in yoga principles? Oh, pray tell me this, for I am eager to.
O holy sage, tell me how the worshipful Rishi and Daksha, the son of Brahma, generated children after securing their wives, the other two daughters of Samwa Bhuva Manu.
The great sage Maitreya replied, commanded by Lord Brahma to beget children in the world, the worshipful Kardama Muni practiced penance on the bank of the river Saraswati for a period of 10,000 years.
During that period of penance, the sage Kardama, by worship through the service in trance,
Propitiated
the personality of Godhead, who is the quick bestower of all blessings upon those who flee to him for protection.
Then, in the Satya Yuga, the lotus-eyed Supreme Personality of Godhead, being pleased, showed himself to that Kardama Muni and displayed his transcendental form, which can be understood only through the Vedas.
Kardama Muni saw the Supreme Personality of Godhead, who is free from material contamination in his eternal form, effulgent like the sun, wearing a garland of white lotuses and water lilies. The Lord was clad in spotless yellow silk, and his lotus face was fringed with slick, dark locks of curly hair.
Adorned with a crown and earrings, he held his characteristic conch, disc, and mace in 3 of his hands, and a white lily in his fourth. He glanced about in a happy, smiling mood. Sight captivates and the hearts of all devotees.
A golden streak on his chest, a famous stupa gem suspended from his neck. He stood in the air with his lotus feet placed on the shoulders of Garuda.
When Kardama Muni actually realized the Supreme Personality of Godhead in person, he was greatly satisfied because his transcendental desire was fulfilled. He fell on the ground with his head bowed to offer obeisances unto the lotus feet of the Lord. His heart naturally full of love of God, with folded hands he satisfied the Lord with prayers.
Okay, so those are the verses that we're reading up to today. I'm going to comment a little before we continue with the main verse. Om Gyanati Mirandasya Gyananjana Chakshur Umitam Tasmai Shri. So the first thing I wanted to point out, let's see here. Well, the first question I have for you is, why is it that in these conversations, there's often a question about the lineages? Why do they want to know about these lineages of personalities? There's many lists in the Bhagavatam of names. Why do you think that is?
The person asking is also like he's asking about his own ancestry, like, where he came from, where everyone he sees came from.
Yeah, okay. Yep. To understand one's own history, right? To know which line I come from and what the purpose of that line was and so on. What else? What could be another reason? Yeah.
Validity and details.
Okay. So validity through the history, right? Historical details. Yeah. Okay. That's true. It's a way of preserving, right, the history and retaining the scientific aspect of something, right? These are the names, their actual personalities that lived. What else? Any other thoughts on that? Do you find it difficult to listen to lists of names? Because I know there's some sections where it's just many verses in a row, like name. Sometimes here's another thought, especially if the lineage is connected to Krishna or a great personality. There's something about hearing those names, especially if those personalities were devotional characters. Even just reading their names can be purifying and can help us imbibe their qualities. Prabhupada once said, you don't even have to understand the language of, like say you're in a class that's discussing Supreme Personality of Godhead, right? But it's in a different language that you don't know. It doesn't matter, he said, because it's the transcendental sound coming through that's touching the soul. It's actually it's changing you. Without you, your brain might not be aware. Similarly, we hear how in comas, right, people can be affected. Even when they're supposedly not there, you can't interact with the person, but or they're in the womb, right? We've heard stories of that too, the little child in the womb, that their proclivity for devotion is increased by hearing about Krishna, or hearing transcendental topics. So yeah, just hearing about the names, we don't have to understand, we don't have to know about each one, what their lives were, although that would be pretty fascinating. But just hearing the names of transcendental lineages can also be beneficial on a subtle level. Okay, so then the next point here is that Kardama Muni, he's actually meeting the Supreme Personality of Godhead face to face. And the description of the Supreme Personality of Godhead is very beautiful. You'll see it's very youthful, spring-like, right? He's wearing a garland of white lotuses. He's effulgent like the sun. His garland also has water lilies in it. He's wearing this bright yellow. It's just a very beautiful description. And then he's also, what did it say about what he's doing? What is Krishna's mood like? Do you remember? What mood is he in? Is he really serious?
Got a happy smile.
Yes. So I'll read that verse again because it's nice to meditate on this. Krishna's always happy. He's not sullen and he's not struggling. You know, we struggle in this material world sometimes with depression and things like that. It really can be very heavy. But Krishna, because he's completely free of any of this material world's effects, right? He's just always blissful and always happy. And that's us at our real state too. We're actually like that too. The nature of the soul is that, always happy, always smiling. So adorned with a crown and earrings, he held his characteristic conch, disc, and mace in 3 of his hands, and a white lily in the 4th. He glanced about in a happy, smiling mood, whose sight captivates the hearts of all devotees. So we can meditate on that when we're chanting our japa. We can meditate on Krishna's smiling. He's smiling. He's happy. He's someone who's very approachable, very friendly, very open, very generous. Right? All these things that we see in people who are happy. It's magnanimous, giving, right? So there's many descriptions in Bhagavatam where Krishna, Supreme Person, or one of his incarnations, in this case, where this is his form, the four-armed form, right? So expansion, one of his expansions, that often they're smiling. You'll see that if you read through the Bhagavatam, they're often standing there smiling. Do you remember it, what's another, do you recall any incidences with Krishna smiling? If they come to mind? Kind of in a strange, intense situation? There's one particular one. Yeah. Oh yeah, that's a really good one. So he's doing a magnanimous feat, right? Rescuing everyone and he's smiling. But it was something that looked to be very strenuous, and yet he was still like smiling gently. Right? But there's one classic one, even more, yeah.
Arjuna and the other one, the opposite side, Pandavas, they both go to Krishna, and Krishna and his army, and they ask Krishna, yeah, someone picks first, and they pick the army, and then Arjuna gets Krishna. He's like smiling.
Okay, yeah, okay, yeah, that's also one, yeah, yes. Cool.
So on the battlefield, after Arjuna goes into almost like a shock, he drops his bow, his mouth dries up, so distressed, and the Lord smiles.
Yes, that's the one I was thinking of. It's quite incredible. It's like the contrast, right? Because there's this intense battlefield that's laid out. This is the precursor of the Bhagavad Gita. So you might have, come across this Bhagavad Gita. It's just epic background to the Bhagavad Gita, right? The story behind the Bhagavad Gita. So this battlefield, and Krishna's talking to this warrior who's really distressed. His name's Arjuna, and he's like, "What am I going to do? I can't kill my family members, and it's just so distressful." And yet Krishna, throughout all of that, is staying equipoised, right? He's staying there. He's not frazzled. He's staying there with a gentle smile, like, "I've heard you. I'm here for you," right? That kind of compassionate glance.
He's arranged the whole thing.
Yes, ultimately, at the end of the day, it's all his arrangement. So when you think about what characteristic you would want in a supreme personality of Godhead, right? God, it would be, I think most of us would agree that we'd rather have a God who's smiling and happy as opposed to angry and wrathful, right? Just like the nature of God, like what's a psychological description that you would want in a person that you could take shelter in? Someone who's loving and smiling is it's very appealing. Okay, so now we're going to verse 7. So we'll do the Sanskrit. Tata samadhi yuktena kriya yogena kardama samprapede harim bhaktya prapanavaradashusam tata samadhi yuktena kriya yogena kardama samprapide harim bhaktya prapanavaradashusam. I'm adding an extra S that's not there. But anyone want to chant?
Samadhi yuktena
Tata samadhi yuktena
kardama Pede harim bhaktya Varadashasham
prapanavaradashusam. Tata samadhi yuktena kriya yogena kardama Samprapede Harim Bhaktya Prapana Varada Shishama. Okay, so let's go down to the translation. We have a long purport here. So we'll read the translation together. During that period of penance, the sage Kardama, by worship through devotional service in trance, propitiated the personality of Godhead, who is the quick bestower of all blessings upon those who flee to him for protection. Who knows what the word propitiated means? Yes, Prabhu.
To satisfy.
To satisfy, yeah. It's another description for that. So purport, the significance of meditation is described here. Kardama Muni practiced mystic yoga meditation for 10,000 years. Wow, incredible amount of time. People lived longer back in the day. For 10,000 years, just to please the Supreme Personality of Godhead, Hari. Therefore, whether one practices yoga or speculates and does research to find God, one's efforts must be mixed with the process of devotion. Without devotion, nothing can be perfect. The target of perfection and realization is the Supreme Personality of Godhead. In the 6th chapter of Bhagavad Gita, it is clearly said that one who constantly engages in Krishna consciousness is the topmost yogi. The personality of Godhead, Hari, also fulfills the desires of his surrendered devotee. One has to surrender unto the lotus feet of the personality of Godhead, Hari or Krishna, in order to achieve real success. Devotional service or engagement in Krishna consciousness is the direct method, and all other methods, although recommended, are indirect. In this age of Kali, the direct method is especially more feasible than the indirect, because people are short-living, their intelligence is poor, and they are poverty-stricken and embarrassed by so many miserable disturbances. Lord Chaitanya, therefore, has given the greatest boon. In this age, one simply has to chant the holy name of God to attain perfection in spiritual life. The words Samprapede Harim mean that in various ways, Kardama Muni satisfied the Supreme Personality of Godhead, Hari, by his devotional service. Devotional service is also expressed by the word Kriya Yogena. And if you've sometimes, in the contemporary world, we hear about Kriya Yoga. It becomes like a practice that people do. A little bit out of context, but this is the original meaning. Kardama Muni not only meditated, but also engaged in devotional service. To attain perfection in yoga practice or meditation, one must act in devotional service by hearing, chanting, remembering, etc. Remembering is meditation also. But who is to be remembered? One should remember the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Not only must one remember the Supreme Person, one must hear about the activities of the Lord and chant his glories. This information is in the authoritative scriptures. After engaging himself for 10,000 years in performing different types of devotional service, Kardama Muni attained the perfection of meditation. But that is not possible in this age of Kali, wherein it's very difficult to live for as much as 100 years. At the present moment, who will be successful in the rigid performance of the many yoga rules and regulations? And actually, we often hear like, oh, this person's over 100. It's a big deal, right? Because it's not often that people live to 100 now. So, moreover, perfection is attained only by those who are surrendered souls. Where there is no mention of the personality of Godhead, where is there surrender? And where there is no meditation upon the personality of Godhead, where is the yoga practice? Unfortunately, people in this age, especially persons who are of demoniac nature, want to be cheated. So this is interesting. We'll come back to this. It's kind of a sensational statement. They want to be cheated. Thus, the Supreme Personality of Godhead sends great cheaters who mislead them in the name of yoga and render their lives useless and doomed. In Bhagavad Gita, therefore, it is clearly stated in the 16th chapter, verse 17, that rascals of self-made authority, being puffed up by illegally collected money, perform yoga without following the authoritative books. They are very proud of the money they have plundered from innocent persons who wanted to be cheated. Yikes. So we'll come back to that because that's kind of want to touch on that last part there. But first point is this in the verse. I'll read the verse one more time and see if you can just really take this verse in. During that period of penance, the sage Kardama, by worship through devotional service in trance, propitiated the personality of Godhead, who is the quick bestower of all blessings upon those who flee to him for protection. And so I want to talk about this word flee, to flee to Krishna for protection. So what do you think of when I say flee? What comes up for you? Just shout it out. Running, okay. What kind of running? Like what's from something? Who said that? From something, yes. Desperate. Mm-hmm. Urgent. What kind of situations do people flee from? When is it used, like in the news? The word people are fleeing. Conflict. Calamities. Life-threatening situations. Fearful situations. Mm-hmm. Natural disasters, right? Earthquakes. Everyone's fleeing this country or the state or whatever, or the city. So fleeing, yes. It's different from, okay, so I thought it was interesting because Prabhupada, in some ways, is using a poetic description of running here to use the word flee. It has a certain kind of quality to it, and it's running from away from something toward something. So that's interesting. He's not just saying all blessings upon those who run to him for protection. He's saying flee to him for protection. So what are the devotees, we already know like what people in the world flee from, but what are these souls that he's discussing here, these great devotees? Upon those souls who turn to Krishna, what are they fleeing from in this world? Like what is yes? Distress. Okay, distress, yes. Mm-hmm. So it could be material distress. That's an actual cause for people to turn to God. I'm feeling materially distressed, so let me turn to God. Yeah. Maya. Okay, do you want to elaborate on that?
Yeah, the illusion of the world.
Yes, so the illusion, and that illusion that makes us think that we're this temporary body, right? We're actually something eternal, and we're a spirit soul who's full of joy and eternal, right? We never destroyed, but by being in this illusory energy, we think this is me, I'm this body, and then we suffer because our body keeps getting older and changing, and things happen to our body and our mind, and we identify with those things. So that is the illusion, yes. Any other thoughts on what are the devotees fleeing from? Yeah. Unfavorable circumstances. Do you want to elaborate on that?
Yeah, we might be in a situation where our Krishna consciousness can be hampered due to whatever the circumstance is. So it's in a category of asat sangha, or the association with temporary, something that it's not beneficial for our Krishna consciousness. Anything that is not beneficial for our Krishna conscious practice. Right.
Yes. So fleeing a situation that's going to be detrimental to spiritual life. Yes, that's a really great point. I'm
thinking about practical situations, like living with somebody who's cooking meat all the time, or like Prabhupada, even like why he left his situation, it was unfavorable.
Right. Yes. So then he came to America. So I'm sure that you can think of a time in your life. I mean, maybe some of you fled to Krishna house, right? There was some distress in your life previously or something that possibly, it could be that you just came to Krishna house without the fleeing aspect. You just wanted the association, and it was, just the next step. But some of us come to Krishna house where we're fleeing something that that wasn't conducive. It was depressing to our life. It was difficult for our spiritual journey, whatever, all these circumstances. And then we come to association of devotees. And so we're fleeing from the not Krishna, right? So we're running to Krishna, so the devotees are running to Krishna, and they're fleeing from what's not Krishna. And what's not Krishna is this material energy, which is like a place where we're allowed to come to forget Krishna. And the devotees don't want that anymore. They don't want to forget Krishna. They want to constantly remember. So they constantly run to Krishna. So, yeah, and one other point about what are devotees running from? What are the souls who are running to Krishna? What are they fleeing from? They're fleeing from samsara. This samsara, in the prayers in the morning every time. This cycle. In that first verse that we sing in the morning, there's that description of the forest fire, right? This material world is like a forest fire. And it's just burning up. We're just like in so much distress. And the samsara, birth, growth, and then disease, and then, right, suffering, death. It goes over and over. And the only way to get out of it is to have a spiritual trajectory. Because if we just stay in the material consciousness, then we don't. It's like a Ferris wheel. We just keep staying on it, and we keep going up and down, up and down. But the only way to break free of that is to run for shelter, run to something spiritual for shelter, run to Krishna for shelter. Okay? So the next point that was the radical point at the end of this purport that I wanted to touch on. So Prabhupada is saying here that people in this age, especially persons who are of a demoniac nature, want to be cheated. Right? That's a pretty heavy statement. What does that mean? So demoniac nature, really, it's a heavy statement, but really what that is just that those who are away from spiritual, turned away from the real, who are turned towards material energy and who want to cause suffering to others, right? Because oftentimes when we're in this world, we're envious of others, and we want them to kind of get less so we can get more. And that's the demoniac. You could say demoniac. It's a word that we don't use much in this world right now, but it means anything that's for my interest at the expense of others, right? I want to enjoy and then let others suffer. It doesn't matter. That kind of personal self-absorption, self-interest at an extreme. So when it's at an extreme, that's what it's just described as demoniac. So people in this age want to be cheated. What does that mean? Does that mean we want people to, cheat us out of our money and stuff like that? That's not what's exactly being talked about here. What's being talked about here is being cheated on a soul level. What is happening when the world around us keeps confirming to us over and over, yes, you're that body. Yes, the whole purpose of your existence is to please that body and that mind. Everything is supposed to revolve around you. It's all about you, right? That's what the culture that we live in is amplifying. The ads, everything, the commercials, right? Get this thing and then you'll be happy. Do this and you'll be happy, right? All about feeding that ego and that identity that's actually a false identity. It's not really us. And so that in that way, you could say, yes, we came here because we wanted to get into that sort of environment. We wanted to be affirmed in that belief that, yes, I'm separate from God and I'm the enjoyer. There's not a God. No, I don't want that in the picture. I want to be I want to be God. I want to be the main one, right? What do they call that? The main character, right? Yeah. So when we want that, then of course the soul has a certain level of free will. So Krishna says, okay, sure, you can come to this place where it's going to be confirmed over and over that it's all about you. And then you're going to suffer over and over because it's not really all about us, but we're going to want it to be. And so it's going to be constantly this conflict over and over. And if we're saying to someone, let's say I say to somebody here, please give me poison. I really want a glass of poison. Give me poison, right? And everyone's going to be like, no, why would you do that? We're not going to do that. But then let's say someone goes, okay, fine, here, have it. And then I drink it and then I just start complaining, right? Like, oh, you gave me poison. What did you do? You ruined my life, my body, right? So that's an extreme example. But how often do we do that in our own life? right? We want to be an illusion. Have you ever felt like, yes, I just want to be an illusion. I just want to binge out on my show. I don't want to think about things. I don't want to think about the reality of this world. I just want to kind of cover over and be kind of hunky-dory, comfortable. There is a certain, I think early on in our devotional practice, in our spiritual journey, there's a mix, right? We want to stay just comfortable enough that we can sustain. We sort of need it's like an intermittent place where we're sort of like, yes, I want Krishna, but I still need a little bit of illusion because it's too heavy to just keep thinking about, right? And so we kind of go back and forth a little. But as we start filling our cup with that spiritual higher purpose and that real, the juice for the soul, you could say, right? Like really our eternal pleasure of connecting with Krishna, then the rest kind of comes out. It's like, okay, well, I don't want to keep being covered because every time I'm illusioned, what happens? Like okay, so let's say on a practical note, maybe on a mild level, what's a way that you might think, what's a way that you kind of want to be sometimes an illusion in your life? How does that play out? I mean, I already mentioned a couple of options, but does it come up? Maybe it doesn't come up for you, and it's wonderful because I hope it doesn't. But let's just say it did, or in the past, if it did, what was it? What was that like? How did you feel? Maybe afterward. So, for example, I'll give you an example because it's let's say we're feeling like, oh, the world's too much, and I just want to escape into a movie or something like that, or a film, or nowadays there's like these shows where you can, because in the past it would be like a show would be on TV and then it would be broken up with commercials and then that's it, your show's done, you got to wait till next week. But now these shows are available and you can go and watch the whole entire show in one evening. No one's there like to go, hey, like curb that, right? And same with scrolling. We can scroll forever and you're never going to get to the bottom. So we live in this world that's feeding that. Here, get illusioned. It's all here ready for you anytime you want it. So let's say we do that. We're having a bad day. We go and in the evening, instead of going to bed, we start watching a show. What is the effect of that afterwards? What do you experience? Yeah. You're not gonna be able to go. Yeah, so first of all, you're not gonna get your rest, and then you're not gonna be able to wake up early, and then your whole day is gonna start late, and then yeah, it's gonna affect the whole day. What other thoughts? Yeah. Lethargic, yes. Yeah. Also, when we give into our what is this saying? There's an expression, delayed gratification, right? If we don't delay our gratification, if we're constantly going, oh, I'll just watch the next one, the next, and there's no more any boundary for ourselves with our own gratification, then we become more and more lethargic because there's no structure. It's like give in, okay, and then, right? Yeah.
You were saying instant gratification. There's some satisfaction. Oh, I know what happened in the show, what happened in the characters. But then there's also, that's going to be very minimal. But the regret, at least for me, is like a lot more. Like I wish I hadn't spent that whole time. Like, what did I actually do with my life, figuring out what happened in the show? That really doesn't affect my life any much positively. I just know what happened. So the satisfaction is minimal, but the regret is more.
Wow, yeah, that's a good point. There's as we get older, we start to realize how important time is. And then we start to realize life actually goes pretty fast. Like, have you ever had a birthday and you're like, what? I just felt like I was 10 years younger. Like, what happened? Right? Time's just kind of starting to go by. And the older you get, the faster it goes. There was that expression. It's kind of a joke or whatever, but it's like, a roll of paper towels or toilet paper. When you spin it out, it's like life goes like a roll of toilet paper. The older you get, the faster it goes. Because, when you're near the middle, it's like, there's not as much to go around, right? So that idea that it starts to feel fast. And so we start to regret, like, is that really how I wanted to spend that time when I could have done something eternal instead, right? Yeah.
There's something a little self-deprecating about it, where you're like, I feel bad, and these narratives like I don't, deserve to treat myself good, or I don't. Yeah, there's something a little deprecating about
That's a really, yeah, it's a really good point. Yeah. So it's like self-harm in a way. Like, yeah, not doing what's in my best interest. Because in my best interest is to get to bed on time. Let's say my best interest is to get to bed at 9. But instead, I'm going to stay up till whatever and just doing something that's not in my best interest. So in some way, we're doing something to hurt ourselves, which is interesting, something to reflect on. How could I be kinder to myself, right? Yes.
For me, it kind of depends a little bit because if it's like I'm using it as a way to waste time because I'm like depressed or something, and like I could do something better to uplift myself, but I'm doing this out of habit or something, then I'll feel very heavy and like I wasted my time. But sometimes I also feel rejuvenated, or I feel inspired, or I feel relaxed afterwards. It's not always negative.
Yes, I appreciate you bringing up that point, because I was going to mention that Prabhupada said in the material world we need just enough gratification that would be like salt on food, right? So we have some preparation of food, we add salt to it. We want just enough for it tastes nice, not so much that we can't eat anymore. Ugh, right? We're burned out, which is what we're talking about when you do something beyond what's good for you and you feel burned out. That's like too much salt. Too little salt, what does that do? It makes you antsy. Just need a little salt to complete this. It's not enough, right? And so we're a little distressed, a little on edge. Like I need some downtime, I need some relaxation. And so just the right amount. And for each one of us, that's going to be unique, right? It's going to be unique for each person. And we can get the guidance of our spiritual mentors and of our teachers to help us decide how to do that, how to get the right amount of salt, you could say right amount of gratification, so that we feel peaceful in life. So we don't feel like, oh, there's not enough, and I'm constantly looking for it, right? We're looking for gratification because we're not getting enough, or so much that we're just depressed and like, oh, I can't do it. And then that can affect our spiritual life too. Like, oh, I'm worthless, and that kind of mental talk, right? Like, I'll never make it. And so that can be the result of that lethargic, overly giving into the things. So just finding that balance is really important. We have a microphone, we can pass it.
At the same time, I'm thinking that our goal is to lose taste for these things, develop higher taste, and be able to enjoy still on a higher platform, and not to make it as a devotional services like really hard work. To take a break and something, something else. And also, I want to comment on the Prabhupada saying that we are like being cheated. I may bring this example. I just happened to talk to somebody about this. Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati brings it. He says that in India back in the day, it was somewhat popular for some women to go in places where the sadhus and swamis would meditate, and they would convince them to get a child, because it was very prestigious to get a child from such and such a swami. And he said that some lower class men, knowing that, they would dress as swamis and go to those places. And he says the women knew about this, but they would still go because the life was pleasant. So when we, like you mentioned, the commercials, and we see, this new iPhone, new this, we know it's cheating. We know it's not nothing new, but the temporary enjoyment that's going to break, that's what makes us want to be cheap.
Yeah, that's a great point. And it made me think that the first step in any kind of recovery is to acknowledge what's happening. So for us, even if we're still sometimes we're noticing, just to be able to observe and go, oh, right now I'm wanting to get a little covered over by getting this new thing that's gonna, right? Like, but at least being able to talk about it and know that this is what's happening. And I also like that point that Krishna consciousness it's not all hard. It's not like, okay, I have to just avoid all these temptations and all these things, but it's about getting a higher taste, right? Plugging into something that's going to start filling us at a deeper level, so that it's no longer like, oh, I just have to resist, but what am I getting? I'm getting this part of the enjoyment. A lot of people enjoy Krishna consciousness through the food, right? The prasadam, or simple things like that are important for nourishment, or the company, or the kirtan where I can dance, and there's outlets for enjoyment in a spiritual way. So then finally, I just want to mention this point about let me just see. Prabhupada says, he says, where is the yoga? If Krishna's not there, where is the yoga? Do you remember that? And if there was two things, he said, where there's no mention of the personality of Godhead, where is their surrender? And where there's no meditation upon, where is the yoga practice? So imagine you got a gift, a present. You got like a nice wrapped gift, and inside is something valuable. Then you open the box, you open it carefully, right? You take the lid off, or whatever. You keep the wrapping nice. You take the item, throw it in your trash, and then you keep the box. And you hold onto the box and you keep it for years, and you keep it nice, like nice wrapping, nice bow, right? You put it on your shelf. And so that's the idea that Prabhupada's getting at, is that without the main content, what is it? It's just gift wrapping. It's just like, it's not really, it's lost its substance. The present no longer has any substance, right? It's in the trash. So the same with these practices. And an example of that we hear about in our scripture is Hiranyakashipu, who he did all the things, right? He was a great meditator. He meditated on steroids, right? He was really good at it. But what was the result? It wasn't auspicious at all. It wasn't spiritual. His motivation was very selfish and very cruel at the end of the day. He wanted to enjoy at the expense of others. So therefore, it was missing that substance. It wasn't really meditation. It was something else. So in this age, and this is the kind of conclusion of this class, is in this age, Krishna has given us such an easy process of meditation. And that is to, what is it? Chant the holy names of God, right? And God has unlimited names. We can chant in the name that inspires us. And this Maha Mantra, right? To chant, to deliver that mind. It's constantly restless. This is the real meditation, and Krishna is non-different. He's actually there. So it's like you're getting it's not the empty gift wrapping. It's Krishna's there in his name. He's there. It's not in his name. He is his name. Right? Prabhupada actually said that once. He's not in his name. He is his name. So he's non-different from his name. So we get that amazing blessing of being able to have this process. If you think about in school, a good teacher is somebody who can kind of gauge the audience and the students, and they can decide like this student, or they can notice this student is struggling. Maybe they have ADHD and they can't focus and there's too much stimulation, right? They have they need some additional support. And so a teacher will find a way to help that particular student. And so Krishna is doing that with us. In this age, we're all restless. Our minds are full of doubt and confusion. We're very short, what do you call that? Short memory? We don't, short-term memory. Yeah, anyway, we don't remember things. We read something, it's like gone the next minute, right? We're kind of a little bit like dull compared to the previous personalities of the previous ages. And so God, who's the ultimate teacher, he goes, okay, I have a classroom full of just very distracted kids, right? They're like all over the place. They don't know what to do for themselves. They don't know what's in their best interest. It's like if you have rowdy children, they're just like lighting fires and they don't know what's good for them. They're creating chaos, right? So a good teacher is going to rein that in and help them. And so Krishna says, okay, in this age, let's give them something that's going to help them, and it's going to be not only helpful but joyful, so that they get that joy and they don't have to keep they get that higher taste, right? So it's all in one deal that you get for this age. Not only is it quick and rapid, but it's also pleasant and enjoyable. And if you get bored of sitting and chanting, you can then dance and chant, right? You can dance with your friends and do it. You can do it solitary. For whatever mood you're in, it's there. So if you're restless, chant. If you're happy, chant. If you're distressed, chant, right? It goes for any mood and any time. That's what the amazing quality of this gift is. So I just want to reiterate what we talked about. So we talked about like fleeing to Krishna, right? Fleeing away from the distress of this world, fleeing to Krishna. And which requires trusting that Krishna is going to be the one who helps me. And then we talked about how we sometimes want to be cheated. And it takes a little bit of thought to recognize that in ourselves, a little introspection, like, when do I want that? right? Because sometimes we read these books and we think, oh, that's talking about someone else. But let's be self-reflective and go, is that true? Does that apply to me sometimes? Do I want to be cheated sometimes? And then we talked about where's the meditation? The real meditation is to not throw away the gift, keep it. And that is the chanting of the holy names, that we can do at any time. Bhaktivinoda Thakur said, whoever continuously, I'll just read you one thing here, the final thing here. The holy name has appeared solely for the benefit of the living entities as their Lord and Master, their supreme worshipful object, and their spiritual guide and mentor, similar to what we say in the morning, right? Whoever continuously chants Lord Krishna's holy name, even in his sleep, can easily realize that the name is a direct manifestation of Krishna himself, in spite of the influences of Kali Yuga. There we go. We got a guaranteed way to perfect our lives, even if we chant in our sleep. And I'm sure you've all heard a roommate chant in their sleep before, which is pretty amazing, right? When you hear a devotee chanting in their sleep, pretty amazing. So, any final thoughts or questions? Yes, Guru.
Thank you very much. I was just thinking, in our own personal, it's not like it's like a tag of war, working hard, our Krishna consciousness, and at the same time, getting a certain, just the right amount of recreation. I was thinking how if somehow we manage to stay in a devotee association, it will be less difficult to figure out that ratio. Because it's, everything is different when it's done in devotee association. Even when we play soccer, there's nothing more mundane, right? But when we do it in devotee association, it's like, it changes.
Yeah.
Or if you have to watch something, then that point of reference I'm doing in devotee association will be more conscious of content. Because not everything that it's on the screen, it's degrading. There's some uplifting content. So
right.
Together we can actually, go through that tag of war or strategic way, so we can actually make the headway and not to get implicated. So sadhu sangha.
Yeah, it's like the difference between one stick that you could easily break and a bundle of sticks that you can't. So even if we're doing a quote unquote mundane activity, but together we can uplift the consciousness of that activity. Reminded, like even I've experienced that even with a movie, right? You're watching a movie with a devotional friend and you're discussing the metaphors from it and the spiritual, right? You're extracting things. And yes, it's not the ideal thing. We don't want to be like spending our lives doing that, but it is a way, if we do it with devotees, we're no longer solitary with our own mind and we're able to uplift it together. So that's a really great point. Thank you. Yes, final comment here.
And then to also remember that everything comes from the Lord. Now, granted, there are some things that a devotee should never watch or hear, but at the same time, everything comes from Krishna. And so there's the possibility of even recreation being dovetailed in devotional service. But without that devotee association, it's very difficult to make that connection.
Great point. Yeah, thank you so much. Yeah, I like that. It's to remember that Krishna is the supreme enjoyer, and so everything that's enjoyable in this world is just a spark of his splendor. And if we connect to him, imagine the joy we'll have, right? The enjoyment we'll experience. So Srimad Bhagavatam ki jai, Srila Prabhupada ki jai. Thank you all. Hare Krishna.
Bhagavad Mahaprasadam ki jai.
Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna. Krishna. Krishna.